Running Aces Casino and Racetrack is the Twin Cities' premier choice for exciting entertainment, 24/7 gaming and dining, monthly comedy shows, and $1 blackjack with no commission or ante, making it the most player-friendly casino around. Trout Air Tavern at Running Aces offers Minnesota-inspired handcrafted dishes with locally sourced ingredients and the trout that made the area famous. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack, 25 minutes north of downtown. Visit runaces.com. Running Aces, your night out is waiting. TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand.
I can't tell you how much I enjoyed saying touch 'em all.
Way back and gone! Touch 'em all, Joe Mauer!
And now these guys are making it relevant to this year's Twins.
Now, our two resident hardball nerds will attempt to touch them all on the week's news surrounding the Twins in MLB. Here's Phil Mackey and Derek Wetmore.
Hey, welcome to Touch 'em All podcast, episode number, I have no idea. This is Derek Wetmore and Phil Mackey's with me. Phil, are you ready to spend somebody else's money?
I'm trying to figure out what episode number it is. Now you've got me thinking. I suppose you could just look at the title if you're listening.
But also, we don't label them all, so it's gotten weird. Some are bonus. This one's a bonus.
Well, it's a bonus in that you and I are doing an episode together,
Yes.
which is sort of rare.
That's right.
But we have hot free agency takes here.
Let me set the scene. I did a column the other day for 1500ESPN.com that said there's a lot of money that the Twins can spend this winter. And good timing, too, because there's a lot of good free agents, unlike last winter. And was it 2 winters ago where we were talking about the Twins need pitching? Okay, who's the top free agent arm? Rich Hill.
God.
Okay, all right, great. Well, they're going to need a trade. In this case, there actually are good players available. The Twins have money to spend. Based on my calculations, Phil, before arbitration rages, so don't take this as gospel, if they're going to go back to their spending level of last year, $128, $129 million, $70 million free and clear to spend in free agency and on arbitration raises.
So I don't think they're going to spend that much. First of all, unless you get Manny Machado for $30 to $40 million, I don't know how you would spend that much unless you're just trying to be reckless and.
Oh, I've got some ideas for you.
Okay. Well, now that I think about it, I told you before the show I didn't have a whole lot on relievers because you can just find relievers, but I actually lied. I do have one hot reliever take. So we'll get to the names in a second. But the way I started diving into this exercise was, what do they have at each? So starting pitching and position players. What do they have? What do they need? And by what do they need, I don't just mean what positions do they need. I think this team, and this is coming from this show definitely slants analytically, right? You and I are both well versed in
That'd be fair to say.
In our Saber speak, if you will. But I think this team, if I could go as far away from Saber speak as possible, they need some dudes in this clubhouse who have some winning DNA. And I can't believe those words just came out of my mouth.
Okay, all
and
right.
I don't mean gritty players who aren't good at baseball, but I'll throw the first name out here from the pitching side. Dallas Keuchel is a really good pitcher. He's a free agent. He's 31 years old here in a couple months. And actually, what's amazing about Dallas Keuchel is he is in an era of unprecedented strikeout numbers. He's actually more of a pitch-to-contact guy. If you look at his numbers historically, he does strike out 7 batters per 9 innings, but in today's game, you might as well be Nick Blackburn if you strike out 7 batters per 9 innings. He's more of a ground ball pitcher, but I look at a guy like Dallas Keuchel. He's been part of a winning franchise for a long time, and he's been a key part of a winning franchise for a long time here, for the last 4 years with Houston. He's got World Series credibility. He's pitched against the best teams in baseball on the brightest of stages. And I just feel like this team needs guys like that. You should account for that when you're bringing in free agents. If it's between a couple really good players and one of them actually has winning DNA, I've moved past the point of just scoffing at that.
Yes, I agree. You look at the 2018 Twins season and say no more. I mean, you bring in a couple of guys on discounted contracts and you tell Brian Dozier, we're not going to extend you. Let's see how this plays out. And you wound up with a bitter clubhouse. Let's be honest. It was not a perfect recipe for the Twins. And I think that's an oversight on their part. Now, I didn't predict that. I didn't think to myself, boy, I'm not sure. Yeah, Lance Lynn could be worth $12 million, but is he going to sour some of the pitching staff? I didn't think about that. But here's the thing. It's not my job. it's my job to just talk about this and have fun with it and try to do a good Twins show. It's their job to factor things like that in, and chemistry absolutely matters. I guarantee, Phil, this, they're going to be thinking about that with every player they sign or talk about in a trade this winter as a direct result of last winter. So Keuchel's an interesting one. If you want to go shooting high on the pitching side of things, you've got to have Patrick Corbin's name on that list. He's somebody I targeted last July and said the Twins should trade for this guy down the stretch. As it turned out, they decided to sell down the stretch, and so have it. But he had a great year this year. Patrick Corbin was one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's a free agent. He's 30, pitching for the Diamondbacks. I don't know what his market will be, but you got to be in the conversation.
It's hard to predict the market, period, just because the last couple of years, front offices have said, okay, enough of these terrible contracts, enough of these Ricky Nolasco and Albert Pujols contracts. We're gonna take back the power as front offices and make you sit on the market until June if that's what your choice is.
Right.
I also had Patrick Corbin as the number one starting pitcher on the list here.
Yep.
28, going to be 29 years old.
There you go.
What does concern me is a guy who has that type of a season in a walk year. Are you gonna wind? I mean, Ricky Nolasco had the same thing. Are you going to wind up overpaying for the best year of someone's career? Yep. At this moment where he's going to pull in a 4 or 5 year contract for I don't know how much money, $15-20 million a year.
Agreed. Oh, more than that. Corbin's going to make $28 million a year.
You think so?
He is going to be the premier starting pitcher. If Clayton Kershaw doesn't opt out of the final 2 years of his Dodgers contract, Patrick Corbin will be the richest starting pitcher this year. That's my prediction. That's my hot take. He changed as a pitcher this year. He was a guy primarily used to be, fastball first, breaking stuff second, and he's sort of in this Lance McCullers. Who else is on this list? Ryan Presley is on this list. You got a great breaking ball, and the fastball's good, but not elite. Or hitters are just good at hitting fastballs because that's what they've been training to do since they were 4. Okay, then just throw the breaking ball all the time. Patrick Corbin did that this year and had a ton of success. Yeah. So the walk year spike doesn't scare me as much with him as it would with a normal pitcher, but I also look at like late 20s, early 30s pitchers. If you're going to sign a 5 or a 6 year deal, you're taking a risk.
Yeah.
Yu Darvish was a risk. Justin Verlander, to a lesser extent for the Astros, was a risk. This is just something that's unavoidable, and I basically try to skip past it anytime we talk about long-term pitcher contracts. Do you have other starting pitchers, or we just bop around the diamond a little bit?
So let's just to organize this exercise, because you and I both have a lot of names to throw out there.
How much time do we have?
So here's what I think. I'd like to just let me present the way I thought about this.
Sure.
And then let's start with one name in particular and go from there. So, unlike in previous years where you looked around the diamond and you had a bunch of established veterans and or hot prospects at every position, so not pitchers but position players, I think the Twins are open for business in both categories now. I think they're open for business at, for sure, 2 or 3 different positions on the diamond. And also, if you look at their starting pitching, Jose Barrios, he's in. Barring a trade, Kyle Gibson is in for the final year of his contract. Maybe they're to the point where they give him an extension, but as of right now, Kyle Gibson is in the rotation. Jake Odorizzi is under contract. I think Fernando Romero starts the season in the rotation, and Adalberto Mejia had a nice showing for a handful of starts before he went down with a season-ending injury. Right? So I think there's room for one starting pitching addition via free agency here if they keep Kyle Gibson, as opposed to previous years where it's like you could sign 4 starting pitchers and upgrade at every one of those slots.
Yep.
For the position player side, catching is a huge question mark for this franchise right now.
Agreed.
First base is a question mark, even though Tyler Austin showed great power down the stretch. He doesn't really get on base, and he's not exactly Doug Minkiewicz in his prime defensively. So I think they want to experiment with Tyler Austin next year, but
sure,
to say that position is closed for business would be incorrect. And up the middle, Jorge Polanco is going to be in the starting lineup, probably as a shortstop to start the season, but they're definitely open for business at second base right now. Royce Lewis's timing is going to factor in at some point, but certainly not to start the season and probably not at all in 2019. I think let's put Jorge Polanco at shortstop. Again, barring a trade, Miguel Sano is your third baseman. You have to see on him. And even though you were disappointed by 2 out of these 3 outfielders, I think your outfield is set too. I think it's Eddie Rosario, Byron Buxton, Max Kepler, and then Jake Cave is your 4th outfielder. Whether you love it or not, I don't think they're going to sign an outfielder free agent to replace Max Kepler unless they trade Max Kepler. They're going to roll the dice on him. So I looked at this through the lens of one good starting pitcher, relievers as you can, possible catcher, possible middle infielder, and so I have a bunch of multi-position guys on my list. But let me just throw this name out so we can, because if we don't throw this name out, it's either you're in on this name or you're not, and then you take the path one or the other.
Yes.
So 2-part question on Manny Machado. Would you give Manny Machado a 10-year contract, maybe an opt-out halfway through if his agency wants that, but let's say it's a 10-year contract for $300 million. Yes or no if you were the GM?
No.
I say yes. Now, I see the way his childish antics make me a little nervous, like this stuff that's happening now in the CS where he's stepping on the... Yeah.
I changed my mind on Manny this year.
Okay.
I was in on Manny Machado. We talked last winter. We were like, go get Wade Davis, get ready for Bryce Harper, Clayton Kershaw, and Manny Machado next year. We just sort of like threw down the gauntlet for the Twins. And I'm not there right now because he wants to be a shortstop and is apparently unwilling to listen to criticism that he's not the rangiest shortstop of all time. I think he's a better third baseman. I watched him in Baltimore. I've never seen a third baseman in person better than Manny Machado, except the one game I saw Nolan Arenado.
See, and I should preface this by saying I think he's a third baseman as well.
But he's going to play shortstop.
Well, but so my contract is signing him as a third baseman.
Oh, okay.
And I actually think the shortstop thing is a leverage play to some extent. He would be foolish to say, and his agent to say, well, I mean, he's a third baseman. No, you get paid more at shortstop. It's a more valuable position.
Correct. But here's my other problem with that. I think in his heart of hearts, Manny believes he's one of the better shortstops and is to be told, if he's to be told, we really value you more at third base. In fact, we'll give you $10 million more over the length of the contract if you'll just play third base for us. I don't know that that's something that his ego would be able to handle. This year has changed my opinion on Manny Machado, and for better or for worse, some team might get a discount because he's going to spike somebody at first base, but for the same reason, I wouldn't pursue Ndamukong Suh, despite the fact that he's one of the most disruptive defensive tackles in the league. I'm not in on Manny Machado right now because a contract like that represents a leader in the face of a franchise. I don't think Manny Machado's either. And
where I'm at with this is I'm going to live with some of those things because he's just flat out one of the best players in baseball.
Yep.
And even if we're talking about a 10-year, I know there's people screaming at their phones or wherever you're listening to this saying, haven't we learned from these 10-year contracts? Why would you enter into a 10-year contract discussion after seeing what Prince Fielder wound up being or Albert Pujols? Yeah, but those dudes were 30 or 28, 29 when they signed those contracts. Manny Machado is 25. So even at the end of the contract, he's still going to be at the back end of his prime.
25 going on 16.
Yeah,
that's my problem.
He looks like he's 18.
Well, it's less about
acts
that.
like he's 16.
Yeah, more about the antics. I sound like old school traditional baseball guy. Behave, between the white lines. That's not it at all. It's just knowing those two things. I think the ego-driven shortstop conversation and the fact that he's just. Maybe I'm just sour on it right now because we're going through the National League Championship Series. I'll say two things about Manny Machado. I think he's going to be one of the best free agents, the most valuable free agents in a long time. Over the length of whatever contract he signs, he's going to bring tremendous value to whatever organization signs him. I also don't think that it's a perfect fit for the Twins right now, and for that reason, I'm out.
So the second part of the question is the more important part, which is, do you think the Twins are going to be in on Manny Machado?
Yes.
Yeah, you do.
They should be.
Because I don't think they are.
Why wouldn't they be?
They're going to kick the tires. But I'm saying, in the end, when there's 3 final offers on the table, are the Twins going to be one of the 3 final offers on the table? And I think the answer is no.
I think there's going to be 25 teams that call and ask for a meeting. I think 15 teams are going to get a phone call. I think 6 to 10 teams are going to get a face-to-face, not necessarily with Manny, but with someone in the agency.
Yeah.
And I think that the Twins will be in either that second or final group. But I don't see him as adding as much to the Twins as he'll add to another team somewhere else. Now, there are going to be teams that cross themselves off the list, of course. I mean, the Orioles are not on this list, but the Marlins are probably not on this list. But my point is just that there are going to be a lot of teams interested in a great player who's a free agent and young.
Yeah, so maybe we're splitting hairs on the definition of on Manny Machado.
Yeah, right.
Like, yes, they're going to call. Yes, they're going to meet at the winter meetings.
But put it this way. Last year, their all-in was Shohei Ohtani. and Yu Darvish to a maybe slightly lesser extent. Shohei crossed them off his list. Okay, that stinks for the Twins.
The Twins actually were able to offer more money than some of the teams that Shohei had on his list.
Including the Angels.
Yes.
So here's the problem. All in, to me, does not make sense for the Twins and for Manny Machado in the way that you, Phil Mackey, use the term all in, which is sort of flexible sometimes. There's all in and then there's sort of all in. But
sometimes I'm bluffing.
In this case, yeah, that's right. Please don't call. In this case, I don't see Manny Machado being bulletin board material, written at Target Field at the top of Derek Falvey's whiteboard, Machado or bust. I just don't see that being. Maybe I'm wrong here, but
no.
As I look for the offseason planning for the Twins, that's not the route that I would start with.
It's also worth noting that I don't think you're looking to fix your franchise via free agency. Manny Machado, as a 6-WAR player, maybe pushing a 7-WAR player, is about as close as you can get. If you're slightly below 500, you add this piece, and then one of your young guys figures it out. I mean, that's like those two things happen. You sign him, and either Miguel Sano or Byron Buxton figures it out, and now all of a sudden you're a 90-win team.
Sure.
So
Cleveland. Manny Machado at third base. Man. Francisco Lindor at shortstop.
Oh, my God.
Jose Ramirez slides over to second like he did this year. You still got Ed Wing at first base.
That would be...
No, who's playing first? They signed him last year. Yonder Alonso.
Yeah.
That's an infield. And look, if the Twins get outdone this winter by Cleveland, it's going to be a problem for them, because this is the year you sort of have circled on your calendar that this is when you can sprint ahead of the Indians. They lose Andrew Miller potentially. They lose Cody Allen potentially. Josh Donaldson's a free agent, although they just traded for him. So there's going to be a real step back. Brad Hand helps offset that a little bit. But if the Indians go out and quote-unquote win the winter, and actually win the winter, not in the way that sports columnists choose to say who wins the winter. In this case, if they actually win the winter, that sets you back years as a franchise.
Yes. So let's just move past Manny Machado. Let's both agree that Manny Machado is not going to be a Twin at the end of the winter.
I think there's a non-zero chance.
Okay. You think there's a non-zero chance that we're going to have a heat wave tomorrow in October?
Wouldn't rule it out.
But let's just for the sake of this, unless you totally disagree, I've got a bunch of names and sort of categories. I want to fly through these and get your thoughts.
Let's do it. But you have some friends at a car dealership that you need to tell the fine people about.
Yes, and a lot of them like baseball. It's on the corner of 694 and Brooklyn Boulevard. Luther Brookdale Toyota has been a proud sponsor of the Touch 'Em All podcast and the Mackey and Judd Show for a long time. And yeah, there's a little bit of a chill in the air here in the Twin Cities. So if you start to sense those winter months, start thinking about your tires, for instance, and your battery. You don't want to get stuck in cold conditions here, freezing your tail off. Right now, you can buy any 3 tires and get the 4th one for just $1 on any Toyota model at Luther Brookdale Toyota. And with that, you get a free battery inspection, too. So you'll get that peace of mind that my family and I have had for a long, long time. And you'll get to see the Luther Lounge when you walk in there, too, which has 2 70-inch flat-screen TVs. You won't miss any postseason baseball. You might be thinking, I want to go home and watch baseball tonight. Well, you can go get an oil change or get those new tires or tire rotation, whatever it is, and you can stare at a massive TV in a comfortable lounge area. 694 on Brooklyn Boulevard and LutherBrookdaleToyota.com.
The Canopy Group would like to thank State Farm, American Family, and Liberty Mutual for all of their future notifications. These notifications are delivered every 6 months to your mailbox as your insurance bill. These insurance companies have the ability to increase your insurance premium every 6 months, and your agent can't do anything about it. Your agent has no options, just the one company. So if you go to your mailbox and open your 6-month policy to discover yet another significant premium increase, do not panic. Think Canopy Group. The Canopy Group has 16 different insurance companies for you, 16 different options. The Canopy Group offers only annual policies. That limits the insurance company's ability to increase your premium. They can only do it once a year rather than twice. Coming soon, another 6-month policy increase for you. Don't panic. Contact the Canopy Group at 800-967-3389 or go online to thecanopygroup.com.
All right, so these are the non-Manny Machado names and categories that I've come up with here.
Sure.
Sort of an incomplete list because, I don't know, it doesn't include obvious trade candidates. This is just free agency.
Can I, let's go through your names, but I want to set the scene really quickly. I'll be as brief as I can because I don't agree with everything you said on the position side of things, but I'll just fly through it. I've talked about this a lot on podcasts, so people are sick of hearing me, but catcher's a big question mark for me. First base, I want to know what Joe Mauer's going to do, but if he says goodbye, that's fine. Second base might be Jorge Polanco, but pick one of those spots for him and fill the other one. Third base, gosh, if Miguel wants to play it, I'd think about it. I'd also really strongly think about signing a third baseman and moving Miguel against his will over to first base. I'd also say starting outfield, if you're going to bring in someone like a camp veteran, I don't know why Rajai Davis just jumped into my head, but like somebody who's played and you're like, that's maybe a bad example because you don't want to fall into a spot where he gets 600 plate appearances, but somebody who you wouldn't be embarrassed to put out for 600 plate appearances in case Buxton gives you nothing.
Yeah.
You want to be covered. Rosario in left, that's fine. This veteran or Byron in center field, and then Jake Cave's a better player than Max Kepler.
Right now.
Kepler's probably your fourth outfielder unless he develops, and we've been saying that for 3 years. It would be disappointing if his career ends up at that spot, but right now I'm set on the outfield knowing that Jake Cave turned out to be a pretty good player if you are confident in Buxton, and that's a big if.
Yeah. So with versatility in mind, here are four infielders. One of them's more of a traditional second baseman, but that could play third if needed. That could maybe play shortstop, for sure second base if needed. Marwin Gonzalez, Eduardo Escobar, Daniel Descalso, and then DJ LeMahieu is he's 30 years old. He's more of a traditional second baseman. Now, his on-base percentage has dipped almost 100 points over the last 2 years, in part because it was .416 or something absurd in 2016.
Yeah.
But he's got some pop. He plays good defense. So Marwin Gonzalez, 29 years old, Astros, plays everywhere. He's sitting on one really good year in his career, in which I believe he might have even received MVP votes a couple of years ago, and then the rest of it's kind of so you're hoping that he can rekindle something close to what he did in 2017. But I'm sort of ruling out the 34, 35-year-old guys like Jed Lowry. I do think you should skew younger with because you might have to go multi-year contracts to beat out other teams, and I'm not going to sign. I'd be okay signing a 2-year, 3-year deal with a 29-year-old, but. If it's a 1-year deal with a 35-year. So I put mostly guys who are still in their prime here in terms of age-wise. Yeah, well, it's baseball.
Yeah, here we are.
Daniel Descalso plays everywhere. On-base guy, 32 years old, so still back end of his prime. We all know Eduardo Escobar. And those are my four multifaceted, in most cases, infielders.
I'd like to know what Marwin is going to seek in free agency. I don't know. I haven't asked him. He's still playing baseball. But that's an interesting one. I think the bat really plays, and obviously we know enough about Eduardo Escobar. The thing that worries me there is it's just such a dramatic jump in production from 2 years ago. 2016, he had a terrible year. 2017, he had a good-ish year, and you're like, okay, good guy, contract extension candidate. Walk year, he goes bananas. And I'm not ruling out an Eduardo Escobar return. I think the Twins will probably have a high degree of interest. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Eduardo Escobar's in a Twins uniform this spring. But he'd be third base for me. That would fill third base. I don't think he's a very good second baseman. I've seen enough of him at shortstop and at second that I don't trust him defensively, and I really like Eduardo Escobar. Gonzalez is one where I don't know where he'd play. He obviously fills in some shortstop. He plays second base right now with Altuve hurt, but I don't know how good he is at those spots. I just haven't seen enough of him to have an informed opinion about that. I don't know. The other two guys, I'm not so much. I watched a lot of Rockies games earlier in the year. I don't think I'd give DJ LeMahieu a 4-year contract right now to be sort of a cornerstone guy. So, of that list, I think I'm down to Escobar Gonzalez, and I'd have to do some more digging to figure that one out.
All right. So, catching. This is a tough one because it's the catchers who are still 30 years old or younger, or they might still have some juice left, are just not available for the most part. It's really hard to find a 27-year-old or a 29-year-old catcher that's just hitting free agency and is incredible. They're almost always flawed. Although there is a 29-year-old out there, you can watch him play right now. Yasmani Grandal, who's much more of an offensive. He's going to hit 25 home runs for you. He's also going to have inexplicable pass balls and some weird things happen defensively. But he's on my list as a free agent. Wilson Ramos, 31 years old, maybe some extra tread on the tires because of he just hasn't played the games that other catchers have played at that age. But you got to be really careful with catchers and offense around that age. You can't sign a guy like Grandal or Ramos thinking, oh, you're going to get this offense for the next 3 years, because you don't. Right. Historically, catchers drop off a cliff when they're 30 or 31, as evidenced by another guy who's on my list, but as a total flyer, Jonathan Lucroy was terrible this year.
Okay.
And he's 32 years old. He's a shell of his former self. It would be a total one-year flyer to say, all right, well, we're going to bring you in here. Maybe you can rekindle something like Kurt Suzuki has with a couple different teams.
Yeah.
But you're a stopgap until we get someone in here internally. And then the wild card, not a guy that you would start at catcher all the time, but if you're looking to maybe mix and match at catcher and just have this dude's bat in the lineup, I would love Evan Gattis in a Twins uniform.
Okay.
Evan Gattis is a free agent. He doesn't wear batting gloves. He's got a huge beard, and he's very menacing looking. DH, first base if you need to, catcher if you 30 games a year. I don't think you'd want him catching 120 games, but Evan Gattis with grinding sawdust off the bat handle would be really fun to have on this team.
Yeah, I was in on Ramos a couple years ago. Now I'm out.
Wilson Ramos had like a 900 OPS this year.
Yep, and I don't like him defensively. There are some metrics that really like Ramos defensively, and so he's a nerd's favorite right now. I watch not a ton of Rays games by any means, but you just talk to enough people, and he doesn't have a great reputation defensively. And there was the injury. The Twins had their shot at him 2 years ago in Falvey's first year, and instead they gave a 3-year contract to Jason Castro. They also could have got Matt Wieters that year. Ramos was on that list, and there was maybe one other catcher that I was pleading for them to look at, and they went with Castro. Now, Castro is at the center of this conversation because if he comes back and can catch 110, 115 games, and you know that, then I'm fine with some mix of Mitch Garver or Willians Astudillo as the backup. That's actually fine. Both those guys can hit. If Jason Castro's knee is a huge question mark and you don't know whether you're going to get 0 or 100 games out of him, that is a huge issue, and you need to address that position. Mitch Garver, for me, is a fine hitter and could play some first base. He got better defensively as a catcher, but he's not going to rate at the top of any list defensively, nor is Astudillo. Both of those guys acquitted themselves better than I expected down the stretch defensively as catchers, but obviously if you're trying to build a perfect team, they're not the starting catcher. Who is the other name you mentioned? Grandal. I don't know. I have to do some more digging on him because he is a sort of a nerd's favorite right now too, and I don't know that he's going to be the hottest commodity on the free agent market. I'm really curious to see what the market develops there. So I probably got to do some more digging on him. But catcher is one that I've got circled for sure. And the problem with writing a column on here's 5 catchers the Twins should go get is you don't know what you're going to get from Castro, and he is under contract. It's a cheap contract, so whatever. If he's the backup and you're just saying, well, whatever your knee is, that's fine, we'll figure it out, then, all right, here's a name for you. The Marlins traded everybody and anybody who had Major League service time this past winter, except their catcher, JT Realmuto, who can hit, he can play defensively, he's young, he's coming into his prime. I got to go look at how many years team control and all that stuff he's still got. But he's not a free agent. This would be a trade. Is somebody I advocated at the time the Twins should trade. Right when Jason Castro went down, I said, call the Marlins. And he led my column of, here are guys you should be interested in. They didn't land him. I don't know if phone calls were made, and I don't know what Miami's asking price is. My guess is it's the moon and the stars because they traded Christian Yelich, Marcell Ozuna. I mean, they traded everybody, and they kept Realmuto. So to me, that says their asking price must have been just astronomical, and no team was willing to meet it. Now, if I'm the Twins and I don't know about Jason Castro, I might be tempted to sit back at that poker table.
Yeah. So this is I forgot about Jason Castro. Oh, what's his contract? 1 more year?
1 year, because
totally
he signed
forgot about Jason Castro.
3 years and $24 million.
Right.
But dude, it's okay that you forgot about him because he's a total question mark.
Yeah.
He just had his knee like completely repaired, and he's a catcher. These things don't just click and go back into place automatically.
And he's not. I mean, he's barely passable offensively too. So he's not like the guy that you're for sure going to put out there for 120 games. This is totally a different podcast episode altogether, what I'm about to say, which we should do this offseason, I would not trade Miguel Sano or Byron Buxton unless some team was willing to overpay for what compared to what their current value is. I think it'd be really foolish. I'm not saying that either one of them is destined at this point to fulfill what we thought they should be, but trading them at their absolute lowest value point would be a huge mistake.
Yeah.
The Twins have done that so many times with Carlos Gomez, with Delman Young, Francisco Liriano, where there's more value there if you either wait it out or if you just have a better pipeline and better development. But this would be a bad time to trade those two.
I agree. I still wouldn't rule it out, and I wouldn't rule out Kepler by any means. I wouldn't rule out basically any young pitcher. I don't want to trade Brusdar Graterol right now, and I probably wouldn't trade Barrios. But after that, people are like, well, but you can't trade. You got two camps of people on Twitter, Phil. You've got, this is why I like Facebook better. My Facebook page is full of rational people and a couple of...
Wait, shit, Facebook's full of rational people?
It's crazy, I know, but they are. My Facebook audience is the best. My Twitter audience is hit and miss. Unless you're a listener to this podcast, then you're a hit.
My Facebook audience is like my uncles in redneck country posting photos of deer antlers.
Okay, well,
and ranting about politics.
Fair enough. You can filter your feed, right? I
need to work on that.
I've filtered deer antlers off of my feed. There's this group who wants to go after every free agent and every big trade at all costs. And that's great. That's fine. You should have an aggressive mindset. I side more with that group of people. Then there's this group of people who prospects 1 through 100 in the Twins organization are untouchable. You can't trade the single A catcher because what if one day he gets a cup of coffee in the big league? That mentality can't coexist with you also need to try to get better. I would not trade Royce Lewis. I would not trade Alex Kirilloff. I probably would not trade Byron Buxton right now. Everybody else, what do you got? Let's hear it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
So if you're going, I have to look more at the contracts and stuff like that. But if we're talking about Realmuto, let's figure that out. Let's table that discussion. That's another podcast for another day. But, if somebody calls with a really enticing offer about Miguel Sano, I'm not hanging up the phone right now.
And then I'm going to throw you 5 pitcher names. 5 pitcher names.
I've got pitcher names.
4 starters and 1 reliever. And we've already talked about 2 of these guys. So Patrick Corbin is the top, just based on age and performance. He's one of the top 2 or 3 starting pitching free agents out there. Dallas Keuchel is on that list. Dallas Keuchel is very high. He's a steady 3 wins above replacement pitcher who has one of the best starting pitching ground ball rates in Major League Baseball. 31 years old. Just went really geeky there. Nathan Eovaldi is on my list of interesting candidates. 28 years old. It was surgery that knocked him out a couple years ago, I believe. He didn't pitch in 2017, but
he's had a couple.
Yeah, he has. I think he's surprised people in his first full season back. He's been very formidable. And 2 other names here. One is literally just a question mark.
Okay.
Clay Buchholz.
Okay.
He's 34.
Great.
But he was incredible for Arizona. His ERA was far lower than his peripheral numbers, his fielding independent pitching and such would suggest his ERA should have been. But Clay Buchholz, who was once regarded as one of the bright young pitching stars in baseball, was essentially out of the league after 2 bad starts with Philadelphia, and he's had issues all over the place, but he's kind of back. And the other name on my list, because I think if you're planning on spending money this offseason, it can't just be little nibbles here and there.
Correct.
Go get a chunk. Okay?
Correct.
So if you're not gonna be in on Manny Machado, be in on a Dallas Keuchel, be in on a Patrick Corbin, and or be in on a guy like Craig Kimbrell.
Okay.
Depending on the term. He's 31.
Yeah. Craig Kimbrell is going to be one of the top of the reliever market. I'm a little concerned about Kimbrell in that he will be the overpay guy.
He's also been walking the plank every night in the postseason, but some of the best pitchers in the world versus some of the best hitters in the world, and the hitters are ahead of the pitchers right now. So
let me think through this, because to me, so you're familiar with auctions. You're doing a fantasy football draft and it's auction style. You're familiar with the term winner's curse. I mean, it's a concept around auctions where the person who is willing to pay the most for it will win, obviously, and so just by definition, they're going to be the person who valued it the most and the most likely to be disappointed by the actual value received.
Sure, okay. This
feel
happens
me?
to me in every fantasy sports auction, pretty much. Yeah.
And apartment shopping, and you find a car, that's whatever. If
Pretty
you're
much.
willing, if you're auctioning against somebody else or you're bidding against somebody else for that house on the corner, and you're willing to pay $30,000 more, you're just more likely to be disappointed because the other person stopped at $250 and you went up to $285, right?
So are you saying that Craig Kimbrell's going to make like $25 million a year as a reliever and the Twins should be out?
If Craig Kimbrell signs a 4-year, $100 million deal with somebody because of his past performance, I think it's likely to be an overpay. And I think the highest bidder on Craig Kimbrell is going to pay too much. This happened with Wade Davis last year. I was in on Davis at first, and then I read this great piece by Joe Sheehan that said, he's not as good as you think he is. He's a one-inning, walk-the-plank reliever who's succeeding on reputation right now. And he was terrible in Colorado.
Yeah, here's the hard part. So Kimbrell, if you just watch him in October so far, has been a one-inning, walk-the-plank reliever as well. But he's also facing some of the best hitters and the best lineups in the world. I would be less concerned about Craig Kimbrell's performance, not that you're saying this, in October, which would definitely give me pause if I was thinking about sending $20 million a year his way on a multi-year contract. The age concerns me a little bit.
Yeah.
When you've been that dominant for that long, and now you're 31, and you've mostly been healthy, okay, what's around the corner? There's no way you're going to be as dominant the next 4 years at that age as you were the previous 4 years. So again, he's on the list because he has to be on the list.
Of course.
And really, if you think about it, the best way for the Twins to get better quicker is to have 4 relievers that are flamethrowers.
Sure.
I mean, look at Ryan Presley. Ryan Presley. I know it's a small sample size, but guys like that are an indictment on what the Twins have had structurally and developmental wise for a long time, and that he's kind of toiling for 2 or 3 years with the Twins and goes down to the minor leagues and then has a pretty good start to the season, then gets shipped off to the Astros, and he's untouchable for 2 months.
Yes.
And he's one of their late inning playoff relievers now, too.
I believe A.J. Hinch called him their Andrew Miller. And that is an indictment on the Twins because they needed an Andrew Miller.
Yeah, they had one.
He was there. He was in there. How come you couldn't get this out of him? So, yes, that's a bad look for the Twins. I've got some... I don't know how much time we have here, Phil. We got some other stuff we got to get done around the offices, but I've got some pitcher takes. And I think I'll just go through them. Stop me when we need to talk about one.
Rapid fire, just fire away.
Twins need relievers. I've been on the Trevor May bandwagon for a long time. I said he should be a starting pitcher for as long as I can remember. And now he's in the bullpen. And the Twins have some actually decent starting pitching depth. At 3, 4, 5, they probably have like 8 of those guys. Adalberto Mejia, I don't know if he opens the season in the rotation, but he's like a 5, 6. Steven Gonzalez, Fernando Romero, Aaron Slegers. Heck, Jake Odorizzi until very end of the season is one of these guys. So if you're not going to use Trevor May in the starting rotation, he's your closer next year. That's take number 1.
Okay. Closer or top reliever?
I haven't decided, but you should probably make the distinction. Is he Cody Allen or is he Andrew Miller? Because going back to that Joe Sheehan piece on Wade Davis a year ago, which was fantastic, a Touch 'em All listener actually shared it with me, and I read through it, and his point was great. Joe said, you're not looking to pay Wade Davis for his past performances. You're looking for the next Wade Davis.
True, yeah.
Maybe Trevor May. I don't know. He's on that list, to me, of dominant late-inning relievers. He had, if you throw out his opener outing, which was a disaster, I think he gave up 4 earned runs and a long ball, and it wasn't good. I think he had like a 1.85 ERA out of the bullpen coming off surgery. And to me, I just look at him and I say, okay, if he's going to be one of those guys, now he could be a multi-inning guy. He could be the sort of Andrew Miller in the playoffs role. Or maybe he's just the 9th inning, lock it down. I don't know. All I know is you look at that bullpen, he's got legitimate swing and miss stuff. He can dial it up. 4 pitches, maybe he scales that back, picks a breaking ball, fastball changeup, and off to the races. But not many guys can run a 35% strikeout rate, and Trevor May did last year.
I've always been in on Trevor May. I'm with you on Trevor May.
Okay, so that's take number 1. Take number 2, Fernando Romero, reliever. Whichever one Trevor May's not, maybe you pick the other one, or you get a free agent to fill one of those, and Fernando Romero just becomes one of your late-inning trusted horses.
Is he a long-term reliever?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm done on him as a starter because of what you have in the rotation, and we all think of Fernando Romero as having had a great rookie season. In my mind, he did not. He had 5 great starts where you're like, wow, do they have another guy to pair with Barrios at the top of the rotation? Then his next 5 starts were like, does this guy even know what he's doing?
So here's sorry to cut you off.
No, this is what I wanted. I'm going through takes. You stop me when we got to talk.
I want to get rid of starter reliever labels, especially if teams are.
So does Craig Counsell.
Right? That's Wade Miley for 1 batter, 5 pitches. But if that's the direction this is going, I think we have to start. I know it's super hard because we've been wired for generations to think about baseball in starter reliever terms, and starter goes as long as he can, and then when he has to wave the white flag, a reliever comes in. But that's not the way that teams are operating anymore. So a guy like Fernando Romero, if I could reframe the way that his role is he going to be, because of his control and because of, sometimes he's out there and he's driving a Ferrari and he doesn't know how fast it's going to go, or where he crashes it into signposts, right?
Sure.
But I don't view him as a 1-inning. I think he's like a 100-inning guy over the course of a season.
Sure, yeah. And
so however you want, so however you want to use those 100 innings over the course of a season,
that's fair.
Implement them as you will.
That's fair. I like his stuff. I think he's got a nice fastball. Really like that. I think he needs to work on how he uses his arsenal. So, not to dive too deep into this, is maybe a podcast for another time, but like a curve. Let's use an example of Kyle Gibson. When Kyle Gibson throws a 4-seam fastball at the top of the zone and a hitter's eye level is here and his timing is here, that's a 4-seamer. Okay, he fouled it off. What does he do next? That matters. Now, if he starts a curveball at the top of the strike zone and drops the bottom out of it, he gets a swing and a miss. But if he starts that little 2-seamer in on your hands and tries to run it back into the strike zone, he might get a take for a ball there. A hitter's timing and visual field is all relative to what just came previously. That's my personal opinion. And so Kyle Gibson took a huge step forward this year in my book because of how he was able to let other pitches play off of themselves. Like, what's the best way? There's got to be another example on the Twins staff. I guess Jake Odorizzi comes to mind because he's got that big hook and he tries to go upstairs with every 4-seam fastball.
I was going to say you should ask Miguel Sano because he seems to have trouble with this from a hitter's perspective.
You could pick any number of guys.
Yeah.
So, but that's every hitter. I mean, the best hitters in the world struggle visually to differentiate when you've got a 97-mile-an-hour running fastball sitting at the top of the strike zone. You see so many guys swing through that pitch, and that's a hard pitch to hit. It's so much easier said than done. But if you have that in a hitter's mind, that 4-seam fastball upstairs, Fernando, and then you've got a breaking ball that plays exactly off of that same spot, and call it pitch tunneling, if it's coming at you out of the same tunnel, and there's this moment of doubt of, shoot, is that the curveball or the fastball? You're going to be so much more effective than if a hitter can see it out of your hand and says, oh, that's the curveball, and if it's starting at my waist, I know it's going to bounce.
See, I think Fernando Romero, I think command is the biggest problem. If
you don't have command, you can't do what I just talked about.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So the question is are we getting kicked out of the studio right now? People keep peeking in here. Or maybe they're just like gravitating toward our baseball take.
I think they heard me say Fernando Romero reliever, and they're like, ooh, leaning in.
But why would he? So you're saying overexposing him over the course of 180 innings because he has lack of command is. But if you honed him in as a 70, 100 inning guy, you can almost get away with walking that plank.
You get to cover more deficiencies, and I don't think he's one of your 5 best starting pitchers if you're doing this thing right. So those are my 2 guys I'm moving into the bullpen and helping fix the bullpen. Taylor Rogers had a great year. Trevor Hildenberger had a disappointing year. He might be in your bullpen. Addison Reed's under contract, so you hope he bounces back, and you hope that his struggles in 2018 were at least somewhat attributable to injuries. Mm-hmm. All right, so that bullpen's starting to look a little better. I'd still add an arm or 2. Here's the next wave of takes, and I do think we're getting kicked out of this studio, so I'll go quickly. Fight me if you need to. Otherwise, we'll just say goodbye. Patrick Corbin, Dallas Keuchel, Clayton Kershaw, after he opts out of his final 2 years in L.A., would absolutely be circled high on my list. That's bulletin board material stuff. That's Clayton Kershaw or bust. I'm fine with that, even given the injury history. I'm rolling the dice. And then this is a hot take, but you've got money. If the team's looking to dump him and they don't want the final, I think it's like 3 years, $90 million. I have to go back and look. Zack Greinke's making a lot of money. He's a good pitcher, but he's like 34, 35. If they're looking to give him away for nothing or give you a pot sweetener to get out from under that contract, I would probably be interested in at least talking about the possibility of trading for a guy like Zack Greinke.
If you thought you were going to do something meaningful this year or next year.
You have to.
Yep.
If you're not thinking that way, what are you doing? If you took over this and then just sort of like sleepwalked your way through offseason number 1 and went bargain shopping in offseason number 2, and then in offseason number 3, you're like, well, but Royce Lewis is a few years away, so let's just hold our horses.
Agreed.
No, you got to get going now. If you're the Twins, I think you have to try to compete in 2019 for a World Series.
Yep. So there's so much to talk about this offseason. I mean, we're probably going to circle back on all this stuff before the winter meetings and as the World Series comes to a close. But you can always find Derek's written stuff at 1500ESPN.com. Facebook is a good place to interact with Derek.
Derek Wetmore MLB is what that page is called.
And our Twitter handles are just at Derek Wetmore and at Phil Mackey. And we always appreciate 5-star reviews and quippy, pithy things in the comment sections.
We should do that. We should just read through some of the reviews sometimes. If you've ever done it, it's fantastic. I love reading that. So, yeah, we'll have plenty more on this. Plenty more meat on this bone. Everything we said here, Phil, is probably a column at some point. So let's keep spending the Twins' money for them.
Good talk. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. TCL launched a new lineup of award-winning 4K Roku TVs to deliver the best sports, movies, TV shows, and thousands of streaming channels. TCL's personalized home screen makes it easy to customize your TCL to fit the way you watch. Binge watch what you want, when you want. TCL delivers excellent picture quality, sleek design, and stunning resolution at an affordable price. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand, is available at major retailers everywhere. Learn more at TCLUSA.com.
Where is Khashoggi? I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. Images published by a pro-government newspaper in Turkey show a man who previously traveled with Saudi's crown prince and his entourage to the U.S., entering the Saudi consulate in Istanbul just before writer Jamal Khashoggi vanished there. Turkish officials think Khashoggi may have been murdered. At the White House, President Trump was asked if Turkey has audio or video of Khashoggi. He wants to see it.
Your safety is our...
We've asked for it if it exists.
Are you surprised that they haven't turned it over?
No, I'm not sure yet that it exists. Probably does, possibly does.
Saudi Arabia has called the allegations baseless. More rain expected in parts of Texas that don't need any more rain. Some isolated areas of central Texas could get as much as 4 more inches of rain over the next 2 days. Judge Mary Cunningham's message, don't go anywhere.
Your safety is our primary concern, and so if you don't have to leave home, don't. Stay home, stay safe, stay warm.
I'm Ed Donahue.